Welcome to episode 50 of the Rubbish Talk podcast. My name is Jim Brown and I'm a director at Optimum Eco Group. Based in Irvine, we specialise in the repair, recycling and reuse of IT and e-waste. I took part in episode 9 of Rubbish Talk, so it's quite incredible to think that we are now about to have episode 50. I think Rubbish Talk's a fantastic podcast. It's really great to get insights into people's personal journeys in the waste industry, and it's such a diverse industry as well with so many different sectors. And it's great to get their views on what's going on in the waste sector. But there's also the fun part as well, finding out things that we didn't know about guests on the podcast and some of the things that they get involved in their spare time, etc. So it's also really great to get input on, things like legislation, and everybody's always got really interesting acronyms that they bring to the podcast as well. So that's all fantastic. And if you like it as much as me, then please actually like it on the outlets that you use to listen to the podcast, share it, and tell your pals. Now, it's all that remains for me is to hand over to Alasdair and Jane, and here's to the next 50.
Well, thank you very much to Jim for that great introduction to our 50th episode. Now, that sounds quite good, doesn't it? 50th episode. So we are going to slightly apologise for the sound last week, because I was listening to it and I thought, oh, Jane, you're so muffled. Whereas this time, we're hoping
brand new computer, Jane.
Well, I'm just hoping...
brand new computer is maybe not working right.
No, I'm just hoping we've got these big fancy mics now, Alasdair, and I'm hoping that everything's going to be good this time. So we'll see how we get on. So we did have a few volunteers, didn't we, for our introduction?
Yep, no, we did. So Jim won the prize as the best one. So thank you to everybody who volunteered. Very much appreciated. It is actually quite interesting, Jane, that we've taken till episode 50 before we've actually bought proper microphones. So
I know. I guess
we should maybe just go back to recording on Teams.
Well, I'm sure. I'm hoping that people notice how much we've invested in our podcast.
We've moved on.
Yeah, well, I was plugging it today. It was at Edinburgh University. I gave out some stickers and told them to listen particularly to episode 12. But I did say, there's a special episode.
Episode 1.
No, there's good episodes coming up. Anyway, brief news items.
They should all know about that.
What, episode 12?
They should all know about the episodes because I briefed them last week.
I know, well, I briefed them again. And I gave them stickers.
Yeah.
So we've got a few things that we've been really busy with and things that have happened. We had a British Council visit from delegates from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I can't say it. Herzegovina.
I can't say it either. Herzegovina.
Yeah, so that was really good.
And seemingly I discovered it's a big no-no just to say Bosnia. You've got to say Bosnia, Herzegovina. I can't say it again now.
Yeah, so you were busy last week, Alasdair, taking them around lots of places.
Oh, last week and the week before. So the British Council, who are quite heavily aligned with the British embassies around the world, and their purpose is to promote Britain and Britain culture and so on. So they had a visit lined up to come over and look at the waste management in Scotland. So it was a week and a half visit. Unfortunately, it was arranged really last minute, so it put us under a bit of pressure in terms of what was done. But with support from Resource Management Association Scotland, we managed to get some good site visits organised, and then added a couple of training days, which is always a big challenge because you never know what you're going into. You don't know what level you're pitching at. And it was also done in Bosnian, so it was Bosnian translation, and you just lose that bit of understanding what's going on in the room a little bit when it's been translated.
I'm quite impressed that your Bosnian was up to translating, Alasdair.
No, my Bosnian was not. My Bosnian was not up to translation. We did have translators there, but I did feel by the end of the second day that I could actually understand Bosnian.
You could see by the look on their faces what they were thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But what was actually quite fascinating is a group of, I think it was 22 in total, but they were from all parts of the waste sector in Bosnia, from the regulator to the councils to the legislators to the quite a lot of NGOs there. So because the regulator's fairly weak in Bosnia, the NGOs, the charities, almost took on that regulation role. So there was actually a bit of, I'm not saying conflict in the room, but there was definitely people that should have been talking to each other that probably weren't talking to each other. And it was quite interesting just seeing that develop over a couple of days, where they actually started engaging with each other and saying, oh, we're trying to do this, but our barrier's here, and then somebody else saying, well, we can help with that, and so on. So it was quite fascinating, but they've got big challenges in terms of the waste management and their illegal sites.
It's good. It's interesting to see, and especially when you feel that that they did get something out of it.
Yeah, no, I think they did. They went to, I've not actually spoken to them since. They went to Zero Waste Scotland on the Friday. They went to Edinburgh University on the Friday. And then the following week, the Monday, Tuesday, they were actually with Tom at East Lothian Council. And the feedback from Tom has been very, very positive. So I think that side of it went well. And I think just seeing operational practice is really useful for people, and it sort of lets them compare to what they've got in place.
Yeah, well, exactly.
So,
you need to see things in real life, don't you? It's difficult being told things unless you can actually see it. I think you were also busy this week at Resourcing Scotland as well. I was quite disappointed because this is probably the first time in about 20 odd years I've not made it, but sounds like it was a good event. I was listening to your podcast, Alasdair. I was listening to your podcast on your discussion about all the numbers and where all the recycling figures have come from. So I think I probably need to listen to it again just to completely let all those figures sink in. But it sounds like you had an interesting discussion.
You need to actually watch it, Jane. You need to watch it on YouTube, and it'll make a bit more sense, because then you can see the slides at the same time.
Well, I was driving at the time, but yes, I will.
Well, you better not do that. No, Resources Scotland event last week. It was really well attended, a real buzz to the room, and a huge well done to Nikki and Charlie, who did a huge amount of work to put it together. But I was thinking it was a bit of in terms of people presenting, it was a bit of a who's who of rubbish talk episodes. We had Laura Tange, episode 4. We had Simon Glenn, episode 7 and 28. Jenny Grant, episode 8. We had David Balmer, episode 21. We had Pam Walker, episode 23. Colin Forshaw, episode 23. No, sorry, Pam 22, Colin 23. Sheila Best helped me host a early career session in the afternoon, which I'm hesitating here whether it'll be ready before this one. But it will be out live, and that's really, if you are a young person involved in the waste sector, I think that's really interesting one to listen to. I was shown up ever so slightly because the students and Claire had prepared very well for the session, where I'd turned up as if I was going to blag it, and I was a bit like that rabbit between the headlights at one point and trying to think of an answer on my feet.
Oh, you're good at that.
I think everybody noticed. I note to myself to be a bit better prepared next time. And then we had Duncan Simpson was involved. He was episode 32, and John Ferguson, episode 37. So a who's who of the waste world was all at Resourcing Scotland. But I did have... the event was very well organised in terms of... we finished at... I think it was 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then there was a sort of drinks reception where everybody could meet and mingle for 3 hours. So there was a lot of chat afterwards. But somebody came up to me and had seemingly been telling the whole world that I was responsible for HypnoCat. So if you remember Scott Butler's episode 15. So they'd been telling the whole world that I was responsible for it. So apologies to you, Scott Butler, that somebody's spreading these stories that I was responsible for it. It was none of me doing it. It was some malicious rumour started by somebody. So no, it was good. It was good to see a positive vibe in the sector. But I think what was really interesting doing the Bosnian thing and then doing Resource in Scotland, you know, the industry's got a challenge, and it's the same challenge that we need to educate the public better, and we need to get the public engaged, and nobody's got any money to do anything. So it's, you know, there's quite common threads run through it all.
Yeah, well, that's always the thing,
So-
isn't it? You can do anything if you've got enough funds or enough money to do it. So
Yeah.
I guess it's always going to be a case of where you're going to get that money from.
Yeah, but I think it's also, you know, what I was trying to say to the Bosnians was you will never have enough funds. So it's like, what can you do? Where can you start? Where can you work better together? Where can you work together to start off and build from there? So that was all quite positive. The only one ever so slightly depressing conversation I had was with some young people at the conference it was a few people from a council, not name the council. Their senior management team had changed over, so the new senior management team, and I was sort of saying to them, well, that's really good for you. There's lots of opportunities coming up. And the answer was, I don't get paid enough to do that. And I'm like,
Oh,
just
really?
made me squirm a bit, thinking,
Oh, no.
you know, you're in your 20s or early 30s and you're not doing something because you're not actually paid specifically to do it. You know, why not take the opportunity and try and see if you can progress yourself?
Is that not
So-
what everybody on the
hopefully
podcast
that
have
was-
said? You know, go and take the challenge.
Well, exactly, and that's what I was trying to say. And with myself and Sheila Best had done that early career session, but that was very much the message of you know, yes, go and do your degree, but also how can you contribute? How can you start volunteering? How can you become involved in the sector to help grow your own career? So, but that was a minor thing. So, that was it. So, I think that's all the news we're going to cover. I think that was plenty.
Yes, because we're going to get into the main meaty stuff now, which is
Oh
me.
dear, what we do now? I'm a bit nervous.
Well,
I'm a bit nervous with this.
I'm going to introduce my my co-host here, Alasdair Meldrum, who is owner of Albion Environmental and co-host of Rubbish Talk, and he has been on for the full 50 episodes. So we're going to give him some questions here, and let's see what his thoughts have been over the last 50 episodes and how he's felt about doing these podcasts. So are you ready? Are you ready, Alasdair? We've got some questions for you.
I'm not sure. Are they your questions, or has it been a group effort?
Well, it's been a totally Mia's efforts, and I've gone through them and said, yeah, Mia, that's great. You did a brilliant job. And we were going to get Mia along to ask some of these questions, but unfortunately, because she's our producer and a really important person, she can't actually speak at the same time. So I'm afraid it's just me and Alasdair.
I think Mia planned that. I think Mia planned that, so she didn't have to pay. We're going to have to get Mia. We're this close to getting Mia on the podcast, so we'll work on it, Jane. I think
we will.
I think
So
we need to
my
work on that
first
one.
question to you, Alasdair, is we've had guests from various backgrounds. I mean, you gave a big list up there from, you know, Pam Walker and Colin Forshaw in the local authorities. We've had Laura Taincht on the legal side, Jenny Grant on the organic side. What has been the most surprising thing you've learned from interviewing so many people in the waste industry? I'm going to give you a
I think
timer
the one
on
thing
this.
is. Oh no!
You have to answer within 5 seconds.
That's what I had last week. Laura Tainch had a label with 2 minutes, and it was ruthlessly waved in front of you. So I had 10 minutes to speak at the start, and she put it up 8 minutes. 8 minutes in, and I'm like, I've still got 2 or 3 slides to run through. So that's why we recorded a version that we put out on YouTube, because I was able to spend a bit more time with it. So in terms of guests, I think that the fascinating thing for me is a big portion of the guests I already knew, and every time we did an episode, I learnt something new about that person. And it wasn't always about work. It was just, sometimes it was their job, sometimes it was hobbies. So every time I found something new, but I just think the diversity of how people have got into their career is just amazing in terms of how they've started and, their roots into the industry. And so many of them had absolutely no intention of coming into the waste sector, but have ended up, having pretty successful careers in the waste sector.
Yeah, and I think all of them as well are saying that they really enjoyed it and they think the waste sector is a great place to be, which, we like that.
Absolutely.
Right, okay. So what about a particular episode or guest that stands out as being the most memorable or impactful? I mean, I can think of loads of them. I don't know whether I'll be able to choose one to be honest, but any particular ones?
I'm going to give you a cop out and say all of them.
Ah.
So I'm not picking an empty. I think the thing back to how we started, we had Grant Keenan on, and he was told the story about selling pictures round the streets. We've got Craig Chandler, who's disappeared away to the Falklands Isles in terms of his career coming up through the army. There's loads of different ones, and I think we do now have this bank of 50 episodes that people can go back, and I think to a certain extent they're fairly timeless because, we're maybe talking about specific subjects in terms of news items and so on, but the actual interview themselves are not. You could go back 2 years and listen to the first few, and you wouldn't necessarily know they were recorded 2 years ago.
Yeah, I tell you, there's a couple of ones that I always sort of go to people, and that I think it was Erin Brown who talked about the microplastics in Loch Lomond. No, was it Loch Ness? One of those. That absolutely shocked me. Yeah.
Well, Erin got a shout out from John Ferguson last week, actually. So her episode did get a shout out, and Mia actually did a wee post about that on the day last week just to raise awareness. But that was under discussion last week. I think the whole issue of microplastics and waste is just, in 20 years' time, it's probably going to be our next asbestos. It's a huge issue.
Yeah, and I think just, some of the information we've had have been absolutely fascinating. I mean, I've been gobsmacked by some of the information we've had. So, again, we've done all these 50 episodes. Well, you've done the whole 50 episodes. If you could go back to your first episode, what advice would you give yourself as a new podcast host? Obviously, to invest in some microphones, but what else would you give yourself? What advice would you give?
I think the basis was set up initially was actually quite good. And basically what we said is we're going to put it out every fortnight. We're not going to overthink it. We're not going to people might not agree with this, but people might say, I wish you did overthink it. and over edit it, if you like. At the start, we could have gone down a rabbit hole of thinking, is this right? Are we doing this right? Have we got this bit right? Instead, what we did was just say, consistently, we're going to put out these episodes. I think things like getting better audio and better ways of editing and so on, would have been useful at the start, but I don't think it particularly hindered us. I think the actual promotion of it is actually probably more time. I think people probably listen to an hour and a half episode every fortnight and think there's not a lot of work in it, but there's probably at least 4 or 5 times the amount of work in the back end of that in terms of, getting guests, thinking of news items, getting the news items, doing the social media and stuff for it. And there is a massive amount of work in it in the background. And probably at the time, I had no clue how much was involved in it. And we just did it in a bit of a whim and a prayer.
Yeah, I think it's worked out all right, though. I mean, there's we've had some great guests, and we may have floundered our way sometimes through the news items because some of the news items were quite, there was some quite political and quite insightful news items through there, and I don't think you've done too bad, Alasdair. You've developed over the 50 episodes.
I was thinking about retiring after this one once we get to the end of this hour. I was thinking about
No,
retirement.
absolutely not. We've got another 50 to do. So, what do you hope visitors or listeners take away from Rubbish Talk? Do you think, as it's gone on and it's evolved, what do you want people to take away from it, apart from listening to the next episode, obviously?
I think initially the purpose was try and just explain the complexity of the waste sector to a wider audience. That was the overall goal, if you like. And I think we're probably still struggle to do that, because I think what we've got listenership within the waste industry, and it's how we open out from there. And I think that's really difficult. And I suppose the idea for it was sort of born out a bit of frustration to a certain extent. The waste sector was always talking about issues, but we weren't, it was always, we'll tweak this bit, we'll change that bit. But fundamentally, we need to get the public far more engaged in waste management and far more engaged in actually doing the right thing. And my view of that is they're only going to do that if they understand how important it is and why they need to do certain things and become engaged in it. So I think there's still lots of work in terms of moving it out with the waste sector to other people, and that's maybe where listeners can help with us feeding out to their contact group, not the waste management sector contact group.
Yeah, it's getting it out to everybody, isn't it? And being able to get people to listen and say, yeah, I understand, I know where you're going with that, and yeah, that information's really helpful and really useful.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But I suppose the thing is it pitched at the right level for these people though? Is it too much technical content that goes over their head? Or is it, is there enough there that's interesting that's where I think the career journeys is good, because I think the career journeys, it doesn't matter if they're waste journeys or not. People are interested in
people, aren't they?
How they're progressing through their career. Yeah, absolutely. So,
and the fact that some of them have got some weird and wonderful hobbies just really adds into it. I remember listening to the one, and the lady we interviewed, she was doing, was it sidecar racing? And I'd never heard of sidecar racing before, so there I am on Google trying to work out what it is. So that was really...
Wendy Pring.
Yeah, she was fascinating.
That was Wendy Pring's one. No. Yeah. And she went to Antarctica as well.
Oh, she did. Absolutely amazing.
Remember, she went to Antarctica.
She did. And sidecar racing. She was just amazing. So we asked everybody about a bit of slang or catchphrase or something like this. And we asked everybody about these. Was there anything in those that you thought, that is one of those catchphrases or bits of slang that I'm not going to forget, and I'm going to use that? I mean, I learnt loads.
Well, my mother always used to call, or still does call me, Thrawn. That was the one Duncan Simpson gave us.
Thrawn.
So Thrawn is a Scottish expression for stuck in your ways or stubborn. I'm not sure that's what describes me properly, but we'll see. But I did like the one Robert Rob gave us was scran, which I always think's a good Scottish word for a way to get your lunch or your breakfast. You go for your scran.
Yeah, there was so many ones that I learned as well. So but I mean, again, we had lots of.
Or Amy Bird with her all fur coat and no knickers.
Yeah, she definitely knickers in this weather, I tell you. Any others?
Yeah, that's probably enough, I think.
So, looking ahead, I mean, we've got obviously the next 50 to go. Not taken away from anybody we've already got lined up, but who would your dream guest be? To have on the show, living or historical? To ask all these sort of waste questions or find out about their life.
I think somebody like David Attenborough would be amazing. I think just the amount of knowledge he's got about how the planet's changed and the sustainability. And I remember going to a thing where one of his cameramen did a was doing a talk, and it was just incredible how he showed the difference from when he started his career towards the end of his. Well, he's not at the end of his career, but 20 years in, just in terms of how diversity and wildlife and all that, the amount of habitat lost and loss would had was just. I don't think we quite realise how much that's changed.
Yeah. I mean, he's seen
So I know
over
it's
that
not a
period,
waste.
yeah.
I know it's not a waste one, but
Well, we'll give you that one. I'm sure he can deal with sustainability and
I'm allowed
waste as
that
well.
one.
Yeah, you can have that one. I'd be quite interested in that one too.
Okay.
So
Yeah, well, we'll see if we can get him on.
okay, we'll put a shout out if anybody knows, or if anybody can get in touch with David Attenborough for a chat on Rubbish Talk. Then I'm sure there'll be a prize for you. We've got plenty of Rubbish Talk stickers to give away. So again, what about all the jobs that everybody's had? I mean, I know we haven't had David Attenborough, but if we did, I would swap jobs with him, no problem. But is there anybody else?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Anybody else you would swap?
I would swap jobs. Yep, I would swap jobs with Terry Marsh, Colin Clark.
These retired people, Alasdair.
George Niblock. All the retirees we've had on the programme.
Oh.
I don't know. They're all fascinating jobs, but I don't think I would always go as far to say they all interest me. But I think I've got a pretty interesting job as it is. So I would suggest I wouldn't change jobs with anybody. But if I was going for a day, but it'd probably need to be longer than a day. I am a little bit fascinated by the Falkland Islands. So I'd maybe need to go and swap job with Craig for a day to go down to the Falkland Islands, and I don't know why. I don't know what the connection is of they bringing this back to running, since we've not talked about running for 40 minutes. Falkland Islands did have an ultra race on a couple of years back that I had signed up for the notifications and stuff. So they're not doing it yet, but if it reappears, then I might use that excuse to go and see Craig and go and do a wee race down the Falkland Islands. Might take me about 4 days to get there and 4 days back, but
yeah, I mean the Falkland Islands, it's not actually that big, is it? No, they're
not that big at all.
So I'm thinking about an ultra run around the Falkland Islands. Perhaps you might have to go around twice.
Oh, it's big enough for that.
Oh, right, just checking.
No, it'd be big enough for that, I think. No, it's a decent size, I think, and it'll be pretty rough terrain, and you'll probably have to dodge all the landmines and stuff, so it might have a bit of added spice to it.
Yeah, and obviously dodging the penguins would be quite cool as well.
Dodging the penguins and the seals and the
Yeah, we had.
There you go. So that's my swap.
Okay.
I'll go and swap with Craig.
Okay, well that's a good one. I might come and join you actually. It's like the idea of the penguins running around makes me definitely wish I could go there.
Yeah.
So we've still got a few questions left. How are you doing? Are you ready for more questions, Alasdair?
I'm okay. I'm coping.
You're coping. You're doing very well. So, strangest or most unique piece of waste you've encountered or heard about in the industry? I'm going to ask you that, and then I'm going to tell you mine because it's just so funny.
The recent one I heard about, and I'll not name any names, is a trailer that was rejected from going into a site because the radioactivity monitor went off, the alarm went off. And the load was rejected. They eventually discovered the radioactivity level was quite low, so they managed to tip the load. And once they searched the load, they found some cat litter.
Really?
So it was radioactive from cancer treatment of a cat.
Oh no!
So it caused this trailer to be impounded for days and caused no end of grief, and it was all down to a cat that had been getting treated for cancer.
Oh my goodness!
Clinical waste should have been going elsewhere for disposal.
So what did they do?
That was the most recent one, but over the big clinical veterinary waste, wouldn't it? So we go for high temperature incineration. But for whatever reason, it was in that load, and it was picked up because of the automatic alarms. So
Wow, that's quite scary.
So it's things like it's often, the things I've experienced is often waste in the wrong place. You hear about all the guys on site finding hand grenades and bullets and all this sort of stuff, and half the time it's a training grenade or some of that, but the guys on site have no, they don't know that's what it is.
Yeah. My funny one is John
So
Morrison.
what was your one?
John Morrison the other day. Was it John Morrison when he was talking about a seal? A dead seal in this woman's garden? Do you remember that? Apparently,
yes,
this woman, and it was like three or four streets back from the sea, and there was this seal in this woman's front garden, and she'd run up to complain, and he had to go and say, "Yep, there is definitely a seal in your front garden." And I'm not going to tell you how he got there, because if you listen to John Morrison, he tells it a lot better than I do.
We did pay a trick on a young member of staff way back at Bar, where he was new to the site, so we got a delivery we had a whale in one of the containers, and we made him go around and check all the containers to check for waste, and then one of them was this big whale.
Oh my goodness!
So we waited till the last light. And sent him around to check all the containers.
Oh my god, that'll be quite scary. There's this big whale.
Yep.
Okay, fair enough. That's pretty strange, actually. And I suppose going forward, what about innovative ideas or trends in the waste management industry that you're excited about, you're rooting for? We've had quite a few innovative ideas, haven't we, over the past 50 episodes? Is there any in there or that we haven't actually talked about that you're thinking, yeah, this is really, really good going forward?
Yeah. In terms of the waste sector, out of 50 episodes, we have only scratched the surface. The amount of diversity and different processes and different stuff out there is enormous. But my wee cynical bit would be, is it that innovative, or is it something we used to do? We're at the end of the day, there's a limit to what you can do with waste. You can reduce it, you can reuse it, you can recycle it, or you can put it in a landfill, or you can burn it. Or if you really want, you can chuck it in the sea, which a lot of developing countries do. And that's all you can do. So it's like, it's just sometimes we get overly complicated about it, and rather than thinking, how can we improve our waste management facility to our best ability. So if you're in a country where there's no functioning waste management system, a landfill is a good solution. Especially if you do an engineered landfill, you don't need to go for incineration waste energy, and I think that gets lost a little bit. But I think some of the innovative ideas for recycling products. I was looking at a thing earlier on, some in India that they've developed a process where they've used textiles to create bricks, because there's a huge issue with recycling textiles, so really hard to actually recycle because of different, plastics within them and different materials in them. But I would caution that with saying it's okay to make bricks out of these things, but what are we then going to do in 20 years' time or 30 years' time when we need to recycle them? Are we just creating another problem rather than dealing with the problem at the moment? So
yeah,
I'm maybe a wee bit cynical. There's innovative. I think the whole robot thing's fascinating. The old automated robots and some of the technology they're using for sorting sites is incredible, and that's only going to get better and better. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to sort waste, if you put crap in the front end, you're going to get crap out the back end, however good the robot is.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I suppose when I saw that innovation question, I suppose that's my thought was, my first thought went to the robots and the guy from Danu Robotics who we were talking to.
Yep.
That was all quite fascinating, how they developed it with AI and that kind of stuff. But yeah. There's lots going forward, isn't there? And I suppose it's like you say, there's a limited amount of things you can do with rubbish, with waste. But if you sort it and you can actually be able to recycle it or recover it or actually not produce it in the first place, then, we might get somewhere. So what about how has rubbish talk influenced your own understanding of the industry? Did you have any kind of like light bulb moments or anything like that from any of the past interviews?
I think it's really helped. I think it's really helped understanding some things and people explaining things better. And, I suppose a lot of my knowledge in certain areas of the waste sector is quite superficial. So you know a little bit about what happens, but you don't know the detail. So I think being able to chat to people, the people like Duncan Simpson, Scott Butler, and the batteries and the vapes, in terms of the ins and outs, what they're absolutely embedded in these sort of things, and just explaining some of the challenges. I remember Scott Butler saying, about talking about banning vapes, and he was like, well, we're not actually that keen on banning vapes. We would rather make sure the system is designed to recover them, recycle them, and so on, and the companies comply. Because that's probably more effective than just putting a blanket ban in, which they'll probably not adhere to anyway. So I suppose it's been really good to sort of understand people's roles and the complexity of their particular bit of the sector. I suppose taking it back to my early career, when I was at Shanks, I did environmental audits and monitoring for the sites, and I used to think all the managers were hopeless because they never sort of complied properly with that stuff. And then I started managing sites myself, and I was like, oh dear, this is actually quite difficult. This is quite complex. You're dealing with staff, you're dealing with breakdowns, you're dealing with like 500 different things, and environmental compliance was just one of the number of things you had to deal with. So I think that would be the big thing, understanding other people's roles and problems.
Yeah,
a bit better.
Yeah, and understanding the pressures. I mean, when we were talking to guy from South Asia, no, where was it? East Lothian Council.
Tom Reid.
Yeah, when we were talking to him and all the different aspects that he had to deal with. But what I like about this is I can play a bit dumb and ask all the daft laddie questions, because it's obviously part of my role to make sure that everybody understands. That's my excuse anyway. So again, we've asked everybody this as well, and we've had all sorts of different answers. But if you had a magic wand, Alasdair, what would you use it for? Only one now. Only one wish.
I'm only allowed one.
You're only allowed one.
To get the public to engage better with managing waste in a more sustainable manner. And if they need help doing that, they should listen to Rubbish Talk, and the council area they're in should buy a bin app.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Is that a wee sales pitch there?
Well,
last week at the conference, I put up the thing there saying, our dry mix recycle is 20% contaminated. Our doorstep collection rate is less than 30%. And the amount of waste that should be in a residual bin is only 19%. The other 81% is recycling. So I put up the poll question to say, is the recycling system performing well? And the overarching answer was no. But then we've got a bin app tool that allows people to interrogate that and all the rest. Of people having their phones, people we then engage with. But we've managed to get 2 councils engaged, and the rest are ignoring it and sending out paper calendars and so on. We've got to move, as an industry, we've got to move with the technology.
Yeah, so we're talking about innovation here again, aren't we? Moving with that technology, yeah. You've got something that helps people. It's not, it's not just there because it looks pretty. It's there because it'll help people to know what bin to put out, what to put in the right bin as well. Yeah. Okay.
And yes, there are people that don't use a phone and don't think it, but the vast, certainly people in their 60s and 70s and 80s, use a phone. use a, my mum's 84 and she books all her tennis matches on a phone and an app and stuff. It's the amount of people that aren't using a phone is becoming less and less.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So that was I'm allowed that one. So the biggie is getting the public to engage better in terms of how they manage their waste that they produce.
Okay, right.
It's not somebody else that produces it, it's them.
Absolutely. Take responsibility for your own waste and put it in the right place. Get a bin app to tell you where to put it. Okay? That's ticked all those boxes.
Absolutely.
So
we'll do a cheap deal in 2025.
Absolutely, exactly. We'll do that. 2 for the price of 1. No. So what do you see as the biggest...
No, I can't go that far.
Okay. Yeah, don't quote me on that one. So what do you see as the biggest opportunity or area for growth in waste management? And how would you encourage the younger generation to get involved? You were doing something at Resourcing Scotland with the younger people. So how do we get them more involved in the growth of the waste management industry?
I'll take the second bit first, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's
fine.
So
the younger generation, I think what was great at the Resourcing Scotland is we did reach out. So RMAS and Albion sponsored free places, and that allowed students and young people from various organisations to attend the conference, and then they participated in that or organised the one of the afternoon sessions, and that was brilliant to see. So we are having discussions about how we continue that, and there will be plans to try and continue that. What we were very much all saying to them is, you need to get involved. You need to engage. You need to volunteer. There's plenty of organisations that allow you to volunteer. And okay, we're not using you as slave labour, but plenty of people, do volunteer in various associations and contribute, and it just opens up so many opportunities for people. Just that, opens up opportunities, but also gives them experience doing things that, taking notes, organising things, all that sort of basic stuff that they can add to their resume, if you like. And why would they get involved? Because it's an absolute fascinating sector. There's loads and loads of opportunities to get involved. In terms of growth, the biggest opportunity, I always say to students, I said, if you want to go and do real life-changing work, go to the developing world and try and help sort out waste management in these countries. And I keep going back to, I went to Congo, a capital city of over 10 million people with no functional waste management system. It rained and the rubbish went into the rivers and then into the seas. So, if you can go there and get involved and engaged and set some stuff up on a simple scale, you can make a massive, massive difference. And that quite often gets forgotten when we're talking about climate change targets and all that sort of stuff. Just making a difference in the ground can be huge.
Yeah, and I think as well is, you can go in with bright ideas about technology and stuff like that, but basically, the basis is being able to collect the waste and put it in one place, so that it doesn't, go down the drains or doesn't go down the river into the sea, and just manage it in that way, if nothing else. Start small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
So in terms of, this is your last question actually, Alasdair, and I'm hoping that
thank goodness for that.
I
was feeling the pressure.
So the last question here is, looking back and looking forward, what message would you want to leave listeners with as they look towards the next 50 episodes? How are you going to bring them back and keep them listening?
We're going to do more career journeys, more fascinating career journeys, more interesting guests. And I suppose the key message to me is, and this is something I think the waste sector needs to keep remembering, it is not the waste sector's waste. It's society's waste. And if society wants it dealt with in a better way, if they want the most complicated recycling system in place, then somebody's got to fund that system.
Yeah.
And we need to get much better at explaining how waste works, but there's so many things we need to get much better at explaining to the public how it works. I think we're up against it.
I think that's true, because if, like, what you say is we've only got like 30% of people doing the curbside collection properly, and you think it's not that difficult, and people aren't perhaps just taking that responsibility. Like you say, it is everybody's waste. It's not the council's waste. Just because you put it in the bin doesn't mean that suddenly it becomes the council's. It's still your waste.
I think the other thing I would like to see is producers taking a bit more responsibility for some of the things they place in the market.
Like vapes, for instance.
They're still very much driven. Well, with vapes, I noticed the other day there was an electric toothbrush manufacturer, one of the big companies, I can't remember which one, but they were selling electric toothbrushes. You could not replace the battery.
Yeah.
So they were selling a disposable product, and there's loads of stuff. I bought, for the first time for ages, I bought razors the other day, and it was like, it was cheaper to buy the blades and a spare handle than it was to buy the blades itself. I don't need a spare handle. I've got about 5 in the house. And then when I actually opened the box, it had 9 blades in it, but the packaging for the blades was actually made for 12. And what they'd obviously done to cut cost, if you like, or lower the price, was that they'd only loaded each of the holders with three blades. So you had this big lump of plastic that wasn't actually needed. So there's stuff like that that's just bonkers that they're allowed to put stuff like that in the market. It did have a cardboard box, and I did have a cardboard liner inside, but the rest of it was big chunks of plastic.
Yeah.
So trying to get producers to actually think about what they're putting in the market would be a big step. But
I think you're trying to use that as your magic wand again.
And maybe it is. Maybe extended producer responsibility is going to do that. But it's trying to think of these things that. I've always felt that the sector problems get thrown at the sector, and the sector tries to deal with it, like vapes going on fire and all the rest. And we never do nearly enough to push back at the people that are. It's probably not the public that are particularly their fault, it's the actual producers that are putting that stuff in the market. And they're much more powerful than the waste sector. So.
Yeah, well, that's
I think there's probably enough. There's probably enough content in that vein for the next 150 episodes.
Yeah, we're going to just leave people with that sort of, just do the right thing and tell the producers that we need to sort out their waste as well. So on that vein, on that note, Alasdair, is there any last minute things you want to say? Because I'd like to say thank you very much for the last 50 episodes, and good luck for us going forward for the next 50.
Yep. Well, I'd like to say thank you to all our loyal listeners, which we have many, and I know there's lots of you do share and do. Sometimes it feels like we're talking to a dark room, but then occasionally you turn up at a conference and people are talking about something we've said in a podcast or an episode, and they're discussing it. So I know it is discussed out there, but be delighted if people can like and share and comment and engage, and try and help us try and reach a wider audience, because as I said, there is a lot of hard work goes into it, and it's for the sector really. It's not particularly it doesn't earn Albion a penny. It's probably a cost to Albion, and certainly in terms of new microphones and things like that, it's a cost.
Yeah, and we wanted to go viral. We've got these microphones. We need somebody to take us viral, or any ideas about how we can go viral, and what that actually means. But anyway, that would be great. And thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And thank you, Mia. We'll get Mia on. I'm not forgetting we're going to get Mia on yet. Before episode 100, I think.